Savi's Workshop lightsabers, are they worth it? Should you buy one? Let's address those questions in this pros versus cons video about Savi's Workshop. So Savi's Workshop is the build your own lightsaber experience that's at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland and Disney World. Here is one lightsaber from this experience. Of course, there are many different combinations that you could create yourself. This one is a power and defense. But let's dive into the pros and cons of the lightsaber. Okay, so one of the biggest, absolute biggest pros of Savi's Workshop lightsabers is the experience itself, okay? So Savi's Workshop really is an experience, almost more than it is a lightsaber. So I unfortunately didn't get the experience. I just bought this one secondhand because I'm not near Disneyland or Disney World. So maybe someday I'll get over there. But the experience looks awesome, you guys. And I've heard a lot of people say this, that the experience makes it totally worth it. So it costs $200 plus tax for the experience and the lightsaber, and people have just been raving about it, that it's just something that you'll always remember. It's building your own lightsaber. You have the gatherers, who are the people that kind of guide the process, and Disney does a very good job with building experiences, telling stories, and it definitely looks like Savi's Workshop does a good job at that. So that's a huge part of it. I mean, I would say, well, this is my own personal opinion, so take that for whatever it's worth, but I'd say it's worth it for the experience by itself. And, having said that, I haven't done the experience. But anyway, that's a huge pro for Savi's Workshop lightsabers, the experience itself. Now, okay, one of the cons of Savi's Workshop lightsabers is they're quite heavy, okay? So this hilt, at least with these components, I weighed it, just the hilt itself weighs over 2 pounds. So it's 2 pounds, 6 ounces. That's quite heavy. That means that this is not practical for dueling. It's hard for kids to wield. So even though Savi's Workshop lightsabers are recommended for ages, or, they're okay with ages 5 and up, it's very heavy and kind of unwieldy for a younger child to use. So even though it could be perceived as a toy and it says it's okay for 5-year-olds to use them, it just doesn't seem all that practical for a 5-year-old to actually use it. So the size, the weight of the lightsaber, and even the diameter of the hilt, it's quite heavy, it's quite large. So, that comes back to the components too. So it is a modular design, and a lot of the components are quite large. So it's great for kids in that you don't have really choking hazards. A lot of the pieces are large, so you don't have to worry about that aspect of it. There is this kyber crystal here. That's probably one of the smaller pieces within the hilt. I have one of the panels removed just so that you guys can see that. But the pommel and these other components are all quite large. So, this is kind of going back to one of the pros of this hilt is the pieces are large. So that means that younger kids could theoretically use it. And there also aren't really sharp edges on the hilt too, so that would definitely be another good pro. Now, some of the custom sabers aren't as good about the edges, so I know from various companies, I don't need to name them right here, but various companies occasionally have hilts with sharp edges on them, so it's very nice that there are no sharp edges in sight on this hilt, even in the mirror area. It's all rounded off and safe that way. So that's definitely another pro. A few of these things in the video, you guys, the pro will also be the con. So that's the next one on the list. So you create kind of an original design for a lightsaber. The whole point of this experience is you're building your own lightsaber, so it's supposed to have a bit of your own personality in it. And that means the lightsaber won't really look like any of the character lightsabers from the movies or the books or the comics. And you could perceive that as a pro or a con, right? So, it's a pro because it feels like it's your own personal lightsaber. But it's a con because it doesn't really look like some of the lightsabers you know and love from other Star Wars media. And even some of the specific components that you can use to make the hilt, they're not really all that familiar. They're not that similar to different hilts from the Star Wars canon. So even say the grip section it doesn't look all that much like, I don't know, an Obi-Wan Kenobi grip. I guess this part does maybe look slightly like the Luke Skywalker grip area, or maybe, you know, the Obi-Wan Kenobi hilt. But it just overall, the overall look of the hilt and a lot of the components, it's sort of more like an original design, which you could perceive as a pro or a con. And this, you know, this modular design concept is pretty neat. You know, it's nice that you can mix and match the components. That's a positive. Kind of the flip side of that, one of the negative aspects of that is the selection is limited. So, well, first of all, you have to choose from 4 themes, right? This is a protection and defense, so that's kind of a Sith theme. There's also elemental nature, peace and justice, and there's one more, power and control. Okay, just about forgot about that. So at the very beginning of the building experience, you select one of those 4 themes, and then you're able to pick among different components within that theme. And the selection within each theme is pretty limited. You don't have tons and tons of options, and you're also not allowed to pick parts from other themes, although you could go back later and combine the themes. But from what I've heard, some of the coloring doesn't match all that well. It maybe just depends that, you know, kind of like the silvery grays on this may not match up with, you know, the coloring from some of the other themes, but which that would be another kind of con to it as well, right? So yeah, on the one hand, you get to mix and match and make your own design. On the other hand, it's very limited. You're not only constrained by, you know, that you have to pick a certain theme, but in addition to that, some of the components from, you know, if you do end up later mixing and matching themes, they may not work all that well together. Okay, another thing that people talk about very frequently is the price, okay? So the lightsaber, if you get it from the park, if you get it during this experience, the lightsaber is $200 plus tax. So I know a lot of people say, wow, that's really expensive. Other people say, hey, that's pretty good because like the Force FX lightsabers, for example, which are officially licensed lightsabers, those cost around $200. Sometimes they're more like $120, $150, depends on where you're buying them. So, you know, the price of this is sort of comparable to that, pretty similar. And in addition, if you get them from the park, then you get that whole experience along with it. So that's kind of neat too. But, you know, if you do buy these used, these are not available officially outside of Savi's workshop. So, you know, you can't buy them online in the Disney store or whatever. And I doubt you ever will be able to because Disney is kind of selling the experience. But anyway, these, at least, you know, when I've looked on eBay for these, a lot of times, as of the posting of this video, they're like $300, $350 plus shipping and that type of thing. So they're pretty pricey secondhand. And is it worth it? I'm not totally sure if it's worth it because you're missing out on that experience. And if you spent the same amount of money on a custom lightsaber or even Force FX lightsabers, you could probably get about 2 Force FX lightsabers for that price. But anyway, it's just kind of a different product as well. So now the features of this lightsaber could be considered a pro or a con. Now there are a lot of nice features to it. So the crystal chamber is definitely a standout thing. Turning it on. So this can illuminate and you can swap out different kind of crystals in it. And this hilt does make, or this lightsaber makes all these cool lightsabery sounds and clashes. There's a little bit of a flash on clash. So it has pretty decent functionality. It also has the saber scroll effect. So when the light turns on, it goes gradually up the blade and it recedes when you turn it off. So there's lots of nice features to this lightsaber, but you know, there are some downsides, like the blade and the sound. They're not super responsive. So yeah, that's definitely been a complaint. It's something that I've noticed. It's not quite as responsive as some of the custom sabers. So that would be a downside to that. But at the same time, you have these cool features like a crystal chamber and a removable blade too. That's a pretty nice feature. It just pops out. Oop. if I can get it. There we go, sorry. And then it has this kind of misfire sound if I take the blade out, which is actually kind of a neat touch. So removable blade is nice. It's still not dual worthy, so that's a bit problematic. You know, if you intend to dual, you'd need to convert this saber to something that's dual worthy. The blade will wobble a little bit if you just use the standard one that's provided, and it's just not all around designed to be dual worthy, and all that stuff before I talked about it being large and heavy, all that good stuff. Well, that's not so good for dueling, so that would be a negative as well. What do you think about these Savi's Workshop lightsabers? I don't want to tell you whether you should buy it or not. That's really up to you, but hopefully you'll get a little insight from this video about some of the pros and cons versus Savi's Workshop lightsabers. So please comment below. I would love to hear from you as always.